How's it going, everybody? Hope you're all doing well. So we're going to progress into part 3 of the neighborhood protection plan, or establishing one. So now we're going to talk about leadership structure, elections, and then also possible scenarios that you should discuss within your group. So starting off, leadership structure. So how this is the point in time when you're starting to, get people together. You need to give them tasks and jobs and positions. Now you can do that through elections, which we will discuss here later on in the video, but I want to show you an overall how we and my prior groups and current have established a leadership, command structure in essence. So I'm going to show you mine, and it's expandable, and you can bring it down. So I'm going to bring it down a little bit for the folks that don't have a lot of people at their disposal, because when you first start this out, often there's not a lot of manpower. So you need to be able to scale it when necessary. When you get more people in, you're like, wow, we didn't have leadership set up for, 10 other people. This is a method that can be used to expand very easily and drop back down. So for the leadership structure itself, you need to have an executive director and a deputy director. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail because this is kind of, everybody in their career has understanding of how organizational stuff works, and you have a boss and your boss's boss and all that kind of stuff. But just to break it down on paper, so you have pretty much someone that's ultimately in charge, and then you have someone that, in case that person isn't available or something happens to them, even in a normal meeting, if your executive director is not available, maybe he's like, I have to go to like my son's baseball game, or maybe they had a medical emergency in the hospital, something like that, family emergency, and they can't make the meeting still needs to progress even though the leader's not there. So you have executive director and deputy director. Now after that, it expands off. Now I get it, when you expand it out, you're going to have a board and a speaker of the board and all that kind of stuff like that, but at this point in time, we're not. That's how we're going to expand. I'll do another video on the massive one. But you're going to have specific sections. Now, how I have set up is security, intel, manpower, supply, and medical. Now, it's kind of set up like the military because that's what I know best, and it works very fluently. Now, you can use this as, in the corporate world if you want, and use your own set. It's going to do the same thing. I'm just giving an example. So those are the specific sections that we require. Now, if you don't have all the people to say have a head of security and a head of intel and a head of manpower, you can pull people and do the same job. You can have intel, manpower, and supply under all one. Now, what I would recommend is when you're getting people to fill these roles, have them reasonably understanding. Like if you're not going to put a carpenter really in charge of your medical. Now, I get it, sometimes if you have a lot less people, that's going to end up what's happening. But if you can, try to place a nurse or a doctor, or even like a combat medic, or even like someone that has a little bit of medical, anything. If you don't have like anybody, it could be anybody that's reasonably okay with medical stuff. You got to work with what you have in the beginning. Moving on from there, I'm going to show you how we kind of go down the lines. So myself, I was head of security at my last group. That was myself, I was the watch commander, or the watch CC. So I was in charge of all the security related stuff, SOPs, all that stuff. So normally you have a watch commander, and then you have an officer in charge, which is below you, which talks to the other folks and whatnot, gets them going. And how we had it was 2 shifts. We had a day shift and a night shift for security. Now you're going to have a person in charge of each. Kind of works like the military, very easily. And each section, intel, manpower, supply, is going to have that. Now granted, I get it. Security is more of a 24-hour operations thing. And then intel's arguably, but manpower, supply, stuff like that is, has their own traits. So that's how I set up the leadership structure within my group, and this is expandable. You can do individuals and make more individuals off of that, and if you have the power to do it, do it. Let's progress into possible scenarios. So at this meeting, when you've already discussed, say this leadership and hey, we're going to need to elect and whatnot, You need to think of possible scenarios like electricity loss, fire, evacuation, storms, riots, looting, just to get people's mindset, they're like, hey, we're going to be discussing this in the future. Stuff like that, just bringing up basic topics. Next, we can push down into elections. So how do you honestly have elections for people? Now, you could go the route of literally voting and putting ballots in, but I don't recommend it in the beginning if you don't have a lot of people. Just have a discussion. For example, executive director. You'll probably come together, and if you are, I would say, the go-getter and the one that's establishing this, more than likely you might be the executive director because you established it and you're kind of going with it. So you can say people like, hey, everybody, so I kind of started this. I have a good understanding of it, done a lot of research, and I think I should be the deputy director. Is there any objections? Do you think someone else is more suited for this job? And have an open discussion about it. If there is someone that's more capable of being that and that motivated, then absolutely let that go. You don't have to be in power. Just because you created something doesn't mean you have to be in charge of it. You can still do stuff by allowing this thing to happen. This is ultimately for you, your family, and your neighbor's safety. You shouldn't squabble over who's in charge and who has the power. Ultimately, you're here, like I said, for your family and your neighbors to survive serious, situations. So, like I said, just have a discussion about it and say, hey, does anybody have objections? We're going to have John, which he was a combat medic in Iraq. We don't have anybody else that's better obligated, for the medical realm. Does anybody have objections? He's going to be the one running it. Cool. No one's saying, okay, cool, John, you're that person now. And then you can give them basic tasks. So next and lastly in this video, you need to establish topic of the day. Now, it's just my recommendation. Every time that or topic of the meeting, you should set aside amount of time and come up with what it is, like getting more members, vetting people into the group, ECPs, rosters, internal security, external security. Just pick one thing on this. Just say like getting more members. That'll be meeting number 3's discussion. Let's discuss how we are going to gather more people. Hey, maybe you have family, or maybe you have, other members. Establish a topic of the day and kind of give people, in a way, a little bit of homework if they want to do it. Just say, hey, if you want to do some research on this, let's come back together in 2 weeks on our next meeting, and we're going to discuss what we've researched and what's a good idea. Simple topic of the meeting, topic of the day. So that is everything that I have for you in this next meeting, or this, which would probably be meeting 2 roughly, because meeting 1 you've already discussed and blah, blah, blah. And I've discussed leadership structure. Now we're going to get into leadership structure later on in several more videos ahead, but we're going to, once you start getting a larger people or more people involved, then that's when your, leadership structure is going to go much bigger. So next video, we're probably going to get into more tactile-based stuff and security-based stuff, because that's where we need to start establishing things. We understand how we can get a meeting going, what we need to discuss, and now I am going to be choosing almost topics of the day and showing you everything about that. So like internal security, that is going to be an entire video, maybe 2, of how to do internal security for your neighborhood protection plan or your neighborhood. So if you guys like this kind of stuff and you want to see more, please hit like, subscribe, also throw some comments in. If you want to see something, or maybe you have a better idea in doing stuff. Granted, I have a lot of, expertise in this, but I'm always learning something new. I'm never technically a master at my job or at what I'm doing. I'm always learning. I'm always a student. So like I said, like, subscribe, consider Patreon if you want to donate to this, because we're going to have a lot of videos on this, and I want to really grow this entire neighborhood protection plan into multiple videos. I mean, we're already probably pushing 30 videos in my mind right now. So other than that, I hope y'all have a great day.